let me finish by telling you all a really cool story about revival.
Yeah.
In 1995, I was a senior at Wheaton College, and there was a group that met every Sunday night called World Christian Fellowship, WCF. And when I was a student at Wheaton, it was a just thriving ministry amongst students, led by students. It was part of the OCO, Office of Christian Outreach, but it was a student-led organization. Once upon a time, many years ago, it used to be called the William Carey Society, focused on world mission. So they met at Pierce Chapel, which is this old famous chapel on campus. It's the chapel that people like Billy Graham and Ruth Graham went to chapel in, and Elizabeth Elliot and Jim Elliot, and these storied alumni from Wheaton use this chapel, beautiful old chapel. Every Sunday night, WCF, World Christian Fellowship, took place. In March of 1995, spring semester, some students came from Howard Payne University, which is a school in Texas, to talk about what was happening at their university and in their town. And so students, I think there was 2 or 3 students that came and spoke, and they just talked about how revival was breaking out amongst the student body and what that looked like. And they were there just to kind of give testimony to what was happening. And so on the schedule, there was going to be an open mic time where any Wheaton student could respond to what they had heard that night. And from about 7:45, or maybe it was about 8:45 at night, this open mic time began. And it began with, from what I recall, and there's a little book about it called Revival on a College Campus that documents these events. I remember this one particular fella getting up and asking friends of his to forgive him for some strife they had between each other. And he said, "I don't even know if you're in the audience tonight, but I just need to ask you for your forgiveness, and I want to confess my sin and my enmity towards you, and I want to reconcile with you." Well, that just opened up a flood, because from 8:45 at night till almost 7 o'clock the next morning,
wow,
students just one after another came forward to a live microphone and were just confessing sin, asking for prayer. Students would gather around their friends, put their hands on them, pray for them. It's like things you read about in a history book, in church history. And it went till 7 in the morning on Monday morning. The chaplain said, "Some of you have class in an hour at 8 a.m. We need to stop, but we'll reconvene later on tonight." It went on again Monday night, Tuesday night, Wednesday night, Thursday night, exact same pattern. Students, community members hearing about it, people flying in because they had been praying for revival at Wheaton. Last time anything like this happened was 25 years beforehand, and they so just prayer. And at the last night on Thursday night, there was sort of like an altar call to anyone who felt called to world mission and ministry. And probably a good 100+ students came forward saying, "I want to dedicate my life to world mission and ministry." I was one of those guys who came forward, and I'm living it out today. And that's the stuff. When you see that, it ruins you. It just ruins you for like, Lord, do it again. And that's what York and I were talking about from the York Moore from InterVarsity, is this earnestness and this desire to see God do it again at this time in which we live, another generation of young men and women, and not just young men and women, all of us, right? All of our hearts, all of our churches and our communities. And so be encouraged, what you're doing with Light in the D. Be encouraged, anyone listening, like God is active. He's still on the throne.
Amen.
And he desires these things. Where does it start? It starts in your own personal heart.
Yep.
Later on, I learned that there were I didn't know these young kids at Wheaton, but I later on learned that there were young undergrads at Wheaton that had been praying to see something like this for like 3 or 4 years. They had been praying for this. And all of a sudden, it just happened in the spring of 1995. It finally just happened. But it probably started to happen years before that in their hearts, in some room, in a dorm room, or in a chapel where they gathered, they prayed, they cried out to God to see these things happen. And I believe it can happen now and it can happen again, but it starts right here, It starts in your own hunger and thirst for righteousness, for a relationship with God, and we'll see what comes of it all.